Hello, welcome to the NFSC Friday special. We have our special guest, Mr. Stephen K. Bannon, here with us. So I know Trump just went on live talking about trade and Ukraine crisis. And my first question for you, Steve, is about trade. We know that the U.S. relationship isn't about, it's fundamentally irreconcilable. It's about a value, it's about way of life. And trade is not going to solve all the problems between U.S. and China. And the NFSC knows the hot buttons to push that would absolutely deliver a final blow to the CCP. And they are, the first is completely decoupling. The United States is completely decoupling with the CCP, cutting off the funds and technology. And the second is the CCP expose the hidden wealth of Xi Jinping and the other 100 or so kleptocrats' families' hidden wealth in the West, and also their paraphilia and pedophilia, sexual debauchery. So my question to you is, Mr. Bannon, do you think Trump administration will press these two hottest buttons that I just mentioned anytime soon?
Yeah, I agree with you, Ava, 100%. I think what people should take, particularly Lao Beijing in the mainland, is that, you know, he's not just talking about 10% tariffs, he's talking about 20%. And he understands, because of the intelligence briefings, the weakness of the Chinese Communist Party right now and how they're mismanaging the country. I think it's very important that people understand these tariffs recommend a victory for all of us that are for decoupling. Mm-hmm. Because, as you know, the Wall Street crowd and the big tech crowd are pressing President Trump for accommodation because they make a lot of money with the Chinese Communist Party, the hardcore anti-CCP. And I will tell you, Secretary of State Rubio and National Security Advisor Waltz and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth are all in our camps. They are all decoupling guys. And so I think people should look at these tariffs as a decoupling device. I will also say I agree with you 100% on your second point about this about the stolen wealth of Lao Beijing and the Chinese people by senior cadre members of the CCP and really funneled into the West. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio finished that report in the Senate and has not been released yet. We are pushing for it to be released. There's a quite definitive report by the intelligence community and the Senate made for Rubio when he was on the Senate Intelligence to address specifically this issue. The wealth that's been siphoned out of China into the West of the Chinese Communist Party. So on both your points, and I think President Trump is going to very much press forward with tariffs. He said he's going to go reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd. And for your audience that hasn't had a chance to, I think Alex Leary, one of the best reporters in D.C., has an amazing piece out on yesterday's Wall Street Journal that basically reiterates many of these points, particularly President Trump's going to be very aggressive on tariffs, and that Xi and his senior members of the Chinese Communist Party are so concerned that they're studying very closely, including Liu and Wang Xishan and that entire crew is studying the Soviet Union in the 70s and then the 80s under Reagan to figure out, they feel they're in a box by America and, quite frankly, soon by America and Russia.
Mm-hmm. Wow. As you said, thank you, Mr. Bannon. The article is very interesting because there's a lot of points, as you mentioned, it's right on the point. But there are some of the things we are actually wanted to caution in the United States and this Trump administration be really careful, because we know, Miles School shared with us, we know what the CCP's usual stalwalling tactics would be, because they used it in the first term. Okay, so they pretending, you know, they wanted to achieve a deal, but they just talks. Okay, and they waited out until, you know, the power shift between the parties, right? Because election come in and they seized that opportunity. And meantime, they exhausted Trump's credibility and time. So I wanted to ask you, knowing the lessons in the first round of the trade deal, do you think that Trump would prepare better for the political warfare tactics that the CCP is, you know, has been using?
I think he has. I think he has prepared much better. I think he's, although I think he was very prepared the first time, I think he's prepared much better, and I think he has his, number one team of Peter Navarro, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, who today was on, gave a major address yesterday at the New York Economic Club, and then followed it up today with a live interview for about 45 minutes on Squawk Box, talking about many of these same issues. So no, I think he's learned a lot of lessons. He's particularly learned how the Chinese Communist Party is not to be trusted in negotiations. Let's just go back to the first term. Everybody, I'm sure, remembers that we spent 2 years intensely negotiating a deal that would totally integrate the CCP into the Western economy, and eventually get rid of stuff like slave labor, and get rid of state-owned industries. It would get rid of all the issues and problems that the West have with the Chinese Communist Party, and the way they run their economy off the slave labor of Lao Beijing. It hurts every economy. After 2 years of negotiation, in May of 2019, after he held the Belt and Road Initiative, Miles reminded me that was the first big One Belt, One Road conference. It was actually done in conjunction with Putin. That after it was over, they decided, Xi and Wang Xishan decided after 2 years they were not going to honor the treaty, not going to sign the treaty. And they told Liu to call Li Hu to call his counterpart, right, in the United States, and tell him, hey, no deal. Immediately after that, Xi declared a people's war against the United States, unrestricted warfare.
Yes.
So we remember the lessons of that very closely. Also, people should remember, Miles, the very first time that Miles told me about the pandemic was when I went up to New York. We were going to have our annual live broadcast for many, many hours and days on Chinese New Year's. And at the night before, at the dinner with Bill Gertz and other dignitaries, Miles informed us that, hey, there wasn't going to be a Chinese New Year's this year because of what turned out to be the pandemic, the Wuhan COVID-19.
Yeah. And
Miles was, weeks and weeks ahead of that. So, and Miles was very, very upfront, given his sources at the time, to say, hey, the Chinese Communist Party has released this bioweapon because they don't see any other way to stop Trump. I think President Trump has taken those lessons on. Now, I will tell you, President Trump does not want a shooting war, and he particularly does not want a shooting war around Taiwan. If push comes to shove, he will do it, but he'd rather get some sort of working relationship with the CCP that avoids that. But all of this will be part of, I think, in the overall architecture of decoupling. I think it's pretty obvious with these tariffs, with non-tariff things that Trump's going to do. It just reinforces what the ambassador to the United States said, which is, we consider this war, we consider it economic war, we're prepared to fight this, and we're prepared to fight any war that the West wants to bring to us. They've been very aggressive in their response, and I'm not sure it has been taken aboard us. It doesn't sit very well with senior people in Washington.
Wow.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yes, we talk about this avoiding the shooting war, and also you talked about Pete Texas is in the camp of against CCP. On Tuesday, Trump had a phenomenal Congress speech, and right after that, the Chinese embassy just posted on X saying that if war is what U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, be it a trade war, or any other type of war, we are ready, unquote. And right after that, Pete Texas just said also, like he said, we don't want a war with China, but we're ready. Sir, do you think the U.S. is ready for this?
I think it's Brady brought that up. That's what I was trying to allude to a second ago. People in mainland China in particular understand. People in America are not used to a Chinese ambassador talking about that. Chinese ambassadors are very demure from public statements. They normally just reiterate. In fact, the writing when they put them out shows that the statement was really originally done in Beijing. They're very deferential, very hierarchical. I mean, this is real wolf diplomacy, wolf warrior diplomacy. This is the first time I think the American people really seen the senior cadre of the CCP bare their fangs and really bite down hard. People in the United States took this as a threat of war. And this is why Pete Texas said the next day on Fox, they got him on the morning show specifically so Pete could say, hey, if it's war they want, we're prepared. And I think the rhetoric here is running very hot. And I would strongly recommend we've got to dial it down. Now, we'll see if that happens this weekend. But this is unusual and very hot dialogue coming from what Americans view as Chinese diplomats in the senior relationship here running the embassy for the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you very much. As you previously alluded, you said Trump does not want a shooting war and wants to avoid it, with anything he can do. The same thing applies to the NFSC and the freedom-loving Chinese people. We don't want a shooting war, but we want to caution America that be aware of your desire, because the Satan is really good at using your desire as a weapon to subjugate you. So we want people to understand the reason why we advocate for exposing the wealth is because we can pull the rug underneath of the CCP. Because right now, who are going to the war with the Xi? They control the resources. So if we show them the alternative, they will pull the rug from under the Xi. I think that is the golden nugget that we want the world to know. So my next question is here, because you mentioned in your first answer, talking about people within the United States against Trump's kind of American first investment policy, such as bring manufactured jobs back in U.S., particularly Ray Dalio, one of the largest hedge fund manager in the world, Bridgewater, and in his latest interview with Tucker Carlson, he stated, "It is impossible for the U.S. to compete with communist China in manufacturing, quote, in our lifetime," end of the quote. Because the reason he gave is CCP controls 33% of the global manufacture, and they can manufacture cheaply and effectively. And he advocated for competition, global competition, and dismiss Trump's agenda, which he dubbed as protectionism. So I wanted to ask you, so how will Trump and his crew tackle the resistance? And like people from Ray Dalio, because he's not alone, from within the United States in his second term?
Well, first off, let's go back to that interview. I mean, what was not brought up is Ray Dalio is one of the biggest running dogs of the Chinese Communist Party. Ray Dalio has made a fortune. He's a billionaire for one reason. He's one of the leading private equity folks that took American factories and put them into China with the slave labor allowed by Xi and made a fortune. That's his business model. He's always going to protect the Chinese Communist Party because they're his paymasters. He's a running dog for the CCP, and what he said right there is patently untrue. If we put 20% tariffs on the CCP, their exports to the United States are going to plummet. They understand. I happen to believe 20 to 25% tariffs across the board in the CCP. The country's bankrupt. The CCP's bankrupt in 6 months. I actually think it's the best chance we may ever have of overthrowing them with La Beijing, because they're about to collapse. They're highly leveraged. The economy's underperforming, right? The export. A lot of people are restricting exports now, given what they know is the rapacious nature of the Chinese Communist Party. So no, I think it's very powerful, and I think what Ray Dalio says is exactly wrong. This is one of the reasons that we're talking about putting so the size of tariffs on that we're starting to talk about. Is to bring jobs back. Apple Computer doesn't commit to put $500 billion, $500 billion, into Apple factories, into iPhone factories, right, or at our labor rates, unless they understand that something important is happening. Taiwan Semiconductor, it's not simply about a potential coming war in the South China Sea or the Straits of Taiwan. It's also the fact that they understand that tariffs are coming to the United States, and they want to be inside the gate before they get installed. Because remember, you're not going to have to pay any tariff at all if you manufacture here. So there's almost $1 trillion has come back even from when President Trump announced, or when he had the inauguration. So I think Ray Dalio's mindset, for your audience, people that say we're strategic competitors are misleading you. And they always lead you down a path of wrong action. We are not strategic competitors to the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese Communist Party has to be eradicated, and the only people that can eradicate them is Lao Beijing. We're here to assist, but you can't have any accommodation with the Chinese Communist Party. And to me, we should have immediate decoupling. But Ray Dalio, and there's many other Ray Dalios, people that made a fortune off the backs and the sweat of the Chinese people and prepare to make another fortune off it. And that's one of the things we have to stop.
So thank you, Mr. Bannon. So basically you're saying that we just need to do more education, basically. We need people to know the truth, right? Because that portion you mentioned, it wasn't mentioned.
This is why I think the new federal state is so powerful. And I keep telling people that the new federal state TV, what you guys are doing is so powerful. It's education on both sides. It's to educate Lao Beijing of what the truth is, because they're fed propaganda all day long. It's also to get right to the middle America, into working America, working class America, with the truth. That's one of the things we try to do on the war room. That's some of the things I try to do on the clear and present danger. But right now we have a unique opportunity to illuminate people. And the reason is they see the biggest people in the world, whether it's Elon Musk, Ray Dalio, Donald Trump. Everybody's focused on China in the CCP. This is where everybody's focused. And I think it's incumbent upon us to keep the quality of news up. I mean, you have the daily news every day on Getter that I link, 2 or 3 stories a day. It's done so perfectly with such smart analytics. But this is what we need to do. It's information war. The Chinese Communist Party is, I believe, next to the MAGA movement, the most sophisticated purveyors of this and operators of this, of information warfare. It's incumbent upon us to continue to hammer and to get it done.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Steve. We're also trying to be the force multiplier for both MAGA and also Chinese people, telling people that this is not a dream for like 10 years, 30 years. The regime change is going to happen this year, and we're pushing this. My next question is about like not just we not just have the sellouts in the United States, but also there are spies and sleeper cells inside the United States from the Chinese Communist Party. And yesterday, Kash Patel announced the arrest of 2 active duty army soldiers for stealing the America's defense intelligence for the Chinese Communist Party and other adversaries. So how do you think, Mr. Bannon, this administration will do differently against the CCP spies and sleeper cells, and also like at the same time ensuring the separation of the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party, sir?
Well, I think you see it. You see the infiltration of the U.S. Army. Remember, this was part of the 2 at the U.S. Army is part of a broader group of, I think, of 12 that have been hacking. I mean, there's a couple of arrests and roll-ups. And part of this, of the 12, have been directly attacking, our brothers over at the Epoch Times, had singled them out for attacks. So whether it's New Federal State, whether it's War Room, whether it's Epoch Times, anybody that comes out in against the CCP, as far as information goes, are going to be brutally attacked. And we now know that there's huge infiltration, as you guys have been talking about, and Miles talked about from day one, not just at Wall Street, not just in Silicon Valley, but you now have, mid and junior range people here that are Chinese Communist Party spies and being hackers, harassing institutions. The Epoch Times guys are going to try to come on the show this afternoon to say that they've been harassed by these people, intensely for the last 6 months. So it's one of the, information warfare and unrestricted warfare. The one thing the CCP's doctrine is unrelenting attacks on their opponents and truth tellers. And so everybody should understand that this is not going to go away. And this infiltration is going to be thwarted under President Trump, but it's so deep into the United States right now at so many different levels that it's going to take a while to clean up. I know personally from Kash, because he's a close personal friend, it's a very high priority in the FBI. But that being said, the scale of the problem is so huge that it's going to take a while to get your arms around it.
Yeah, we understand. Yeah, that's a lot of work ahead of this great administration, including FBI and the law enforcement agency. And NFSC is here, and we're ready to help the American people to unveil the truth and to shed the lights on the degree and the extent how bad the infiltration is in the United States and holding those bad actors accountable. So my last question for you, we've recently noticed some very welcoming trends on social media. We notice more and more Americans and who started paying attention to Miles Guo's case. And even some of the things that they posted, they draw a parallel between Trump's lawfare and Miles Guo's lawfare. And we saw a fantastic level of engagement between Americans and with the NFSC communities. Okay, so I just give you an example. One X account, he made a post, and I don't know he or she, but it mentioned that her or his followers increased by over 1,000 followers just in one day. And he or she just realized that this movement is so powerful. So my question is, I wanted to ask your comment and your reaction to this, what I would refer as a convergence of Lao Baixing, whether it's Chinese or whether it's American Lao Baixing, in this people's war that CCP waged against us.
I think it's going to be huge. I think it's one of the reasons that Miles is considered a hero by so many of us. If you go to the War Room Posse, they love Miles Guo, and they think there's something that was lawfare just like used against Trump. They don't know all the details, right, of Miles's case, because it's very complicated to follow. But yes. Miles has, the War Room Posse is, in the War Room show is one of the biggest shows on all television. Our audience, 100%. Revere Miles Guo because Miles came on the show for years and years and years, and everything he said about the Chinese Communist Party became true. And remember, in the show itself, we still play Miles' song, Take Down the CCP.
Yes.
And every time we go to a conference, every time we go to a convention, that's one of the songs we play publicly, and all people know the words. Little children will come up and sing it, or dance to it. Miles is a folk hero here, and I think that's why people are so intensely following the trial and what happens to Miles. But, one of the things that Miles told people is that only Lao Baixing can take down the CCP. And the CCP treats the Lao Baixing like a group of slaves. They also try to buy off, other elites throughout the world. And they're deeply infiltrated here in the United States. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to deal with. You could see it, the corrupt Southern District of New York. And think how President Trump, since he's taken over, the issues we've seen in the Southern District of New York with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, not handing over the Epstein files, right? So this is the corruption of the SDNY. They're firing people there. They're getting rid of it. I believe we're going to find out a lot about the prosecutorial team against Miles Guo. And I think that's all going to be in the future. But I have a high level of confidence that Pam Bondi, who I know very well personally, and Cash, who's a very dear friend, is going to get to the bottom of a lot of infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party into the highest levels of the American government, the highest levels of American society, the highest levels of American finance, the technology, corporations, universities, all of it. Because as Miles told us, for the last 20 or 30 years, ever since the Clintons, right, they've had an active program to infiltrate the highest levels of American society.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely, because I know the deputy DOJ is also in place, Tom Blanchard, if I say his last name correctly. I think so. We're looking forward, to the weeks and months ahead in terms of what's going to happen at the SDNY. So all eyes on them. So thank you so much, Steve. And Roy, do you have another question, or we're wrapping up?
Yeah, let's wrap up. Thank you so much, Steve, for
guys. Thank you so much. I love
you.
The channel. I really love. I was telling Forrest the other day, you guys have done such an extraordinary job on the daily news that comes up on Getter. Is some of the best news I see in the world. It's as good as the Financial Times, New York Times, or the Wall Street Journal. It's just extraordinary. So keep up the good work, guys.
Absolutely, we will. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
See you next week.
Take down the CCP.
Take down the
Take down the
CCP.
CCP.
Free Miles Guo.
Free Miles Guo. Thank you.
Steve K. Bannon, the co-founder of New Federation China. Thank you so much.
Yes, and if you have not subscribed to the daily news on Getter, please do so. As you heard the comments Mr. Bannon left regarding on the media information that we push out on Getter. So please do subscribe to NFSC Speaks account on Getter and on X as well. And we will be here every Friday with the Friday NFSC special with our special guest, Stephen K. Bannon. We will see you next Friday. Bye.
Bye-bye.